Hey guys, it's Mitzi Starkweather. I am here with a quick video to show you how to get started with strobes. Now, the point of this is to be like, hey, Mitzi, I'm going to stop by your studio. I've been doing natural light photography this whole time, but I really want us to try just starting with one strobe for a photo shoot. And I'd be like, yeah, come by. I'll show you what I've got. I'll tell you where to start. That's the point of this video. It's going to be quick. I'm going to give you some takeaways at the end and a list of things to do. And you're going to realize how easy this is. Now, I want to preface by saying that I got started with natural light too. I think a lot of portrait photographers start with natural light. It's how we learn to see light. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to tell you right now that even though I got to a $250,000 a year studio in my small town using only natural light for years, ever since I started using strobes, my shoots are faster, they're more consistent, and my life is just easier. So get started with one. Once you've mastered one, add another. Once you can do two, you can do 3, 4, 5. Your brain has learned how to see it. You've kind of gotten into your flow, but you got to start with one. So here's what I'm going to tell you to do. First of all, you don't need to buy the most expensive strobes on the market. There's no need. You also don't need to buy strobes that plug into the wall. 10, 15 years ago, that was more standard, but now you can get strobes that just have a great little battery pack on the back and they can move around your studio and there's no cords to trip on. Highly recommend. I'm about to upgrade my entire strobe lighting system, but I've used the Godox and or Flashpoint system. They're kind of the same thing now. For several years, they've worked great. You can get in at like a $400 or $500 price point. Not super expensive for a whole light, including the battery. And then the other piece you have to have is the transmitter. So this is what sits on the top of your camera and talks to the strobe. You plug this in, similar to like if you use off-camera flash. You can even set on your little guy right here. You can say, oh, I'm shooting. I need my strobe to be a little stronger or a little darker. You can change those settings right on here. Super easy. So whenever you get this, make sure that it works on your camera body. So I had to get the Nikon version for the hot shoe. So make sure you're taking that into account. But then when you get your strobe, and any strobe itself can work with any camera, right? So here's the other thing you need to take into account. I need you to pay attention to the mount of the modifier, okay? So a lot of times we think strobe is this. No. The strobe is, that's the strobe. It's about this big. It's not that big. Some are even smaller. The modifier, so like a softbox like I have on top of this strobe, that's what's big. So what I like to start with is a 60-inch. This one's a 36-inch. Think about how big your studio is. Think about how portable do you need this to be. Think about different factors like that, because if you are in a permanent studio space like mine, then yeah, you can definitely have like what I have way in the background, like a 60-inch octabox on a big, thick, heavy rolling stand. That's what I use for most of my portrait sessions. That is kind of my staple. And for my raw portrait sessions, which I talk about in my raw portraits course, that's what I use in those sessions. Just one 60-inch octabox and a strobe. Again, this is a 36-inch. This will work great too if you need something smaller. I usually shoot with both in my more elaborate shoots. But again, just pick an octabox and pick a strobe, and then make sure you have a transmitter for your camera that can talk to the strobe. Now here's the last thing you have to pay attention to. I have this is like a 25-inch beauty dish right here. So I want to show you the mount. You need to pay attention to what mount your modifiers have, because the mount has to be able to attach to the strobe. Now, usually strobe will come with several different types of mounts that can be screwed into them so they can work with whatever your softbox system is. What I use is the Bowens mount. So there's not that many mounts out there. It's kind of like, are you iPhone or Android? That depends what charger you're going to use. It's kind of like that. So you just got to make sure that when you order a softbox to go with your strobe, make sure the mount is actually going to work on the strobe that you have. And then if you're buying additional modifiers, like more of these, then make sure that they're all the same mount. It'll just make your life a lot easier because you can just kind of pop them out, put the new softbox in. Easy. So the next thing I want you to do, you got your strobe, you've got it on any kind of light stand, you've got a modifier with the correct mount, and then you've got a little transmitter on your camera that can talk to the strobe. So you've got your main things. Now you're like, Okay, Mitzi, how do I use this in a photo shoot? I'm used to just using a window. Think about this as like a portable window you get to carry wherever you want. And you get to decide how bright it is. You get to decide if there's curtains on the window. You get to decide all those other factors. Amazing. You'll notice here, I have an extra layer of modifier on this one because I like my light from this light usually to be really soft. So I have an extra little cover on here just to make that light even softer. If you want it super soft, you can even just throw an old shower curtain over it or clamp that to the front and you'll get really soft light. Again, it's just like if you have a window and you put a bunch of sheer curtains in front of it, it's just going to soften your light. What you're going to do is you're going to look at your situation. So if you are used to using a certain corner in your studio to photograph your subject, or if you would use a certain corner of a hotel room or in your living room or whatever, I want you to take note of where the window is in that space. So let's say if your window's right here, and then you're photographing your subject right in front of you. What I want you to do is I want you to take note of what the situation looks like. Then I want you to block your window, and then I want you to move your strobe in front of that window. And then I want you to start shooting. Now, a good rule of thumb is to start at like 1 or 200 ISO. Start with your strobe on like medium power. So that's usually about 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, somewhere in there. And just start shooting. Play with it. See what it looks like when it's really bright. See what it looks like when it's really dim. Then play with feathering. And all feathering means is how closely your strobe is actually pointed to your subject versus away. So right now, if you were my subject, usually, well, first of all, this would be way too low, right? We want the strobe to be higher. Again, a good rule of thumb is you want the bottom of the strobe to kind of be in line with your client's chin at the lowest. You can move it even higher if you want, but that's just what I do. But then what you're going to do is you're just going to focus on playing with, ooh, when I move the light toward my client, it's much more direct. There's a lot more light and shadow. There's a lot more contrast. When I move my light away from my subject, it feels a lot softer. And so think about it. Think about it like if it was a shower. If you had a shower head and you were pointing it directly on you, it's going to get your whole head wet, your face, your body, and it's probably, if there was a shower curtain right behind you, it would get that wet too. The same is going to happen with your strobe. When your strobe is pointing more directly at your subject, it's not only going to light them more, but it's also going to light up the backdrop more. Sometimes you want that. But sometimes you just want that light to maybe wash past your client. Much more even, much more soft, much lower contrast. So what you're going to do is you're going to angle your strobe. You're going to feather it away from your client and just let it wash past. So again, if that was like a shower head, it'd be like they were barely getting a light spray of a little bit of mist. Light's the same way. So play with it, play with that strength, and then just go from there. Here's the cool thing about strobes. You have so much flexibility. You have so much freedom. And what I love about it, especially for the raw portrait sessions that I specialize in and what I teach other photographers around the world to do, is that you just set that light and you get that light right one time. And then for the rest of the shoot, all you're worried about is connecting with your client. All you're worried about is having conversation and laughing and moving and talking and listening to music and whatever else you want to do. And you're not worried like, oh, a bunch of clouds rolled in. Maybe I need to change my settings or whatever. So to get started with your strobes, get the products that I talked about. Again, there's no reason to spend a ton of money, especially if you're just starting out. And then treat it like it's your own little portable window. And if you want to learn more, check out my Raw Portraits course. It's available on theportraitmasters.com. And I talk and go way more into detail there. Hope it's helpful to you.